Very good morning. You are welcome to the channel of the New Lyceum for English Literature. In today's class, in today's literary terms, you have a few literary terms regarding novels, kinds and types of novels. And in the kinds and types of novel, first I will talk about a few German terms and then French terms. Here are two terms on your screen: Bildungsroman and Erziehungsroman. Bildungsroman and Erziehungsroman, these two terms have been taken from German. They are the German terms, almost signifying the same meaning. दोनों की meaning same होती है. Bildungsroman is a novel that builds up a character, where a character is built up, right, from the birth to maturity. That is called Bildungsroman. Means in the novel, the birth of the protagonist take place. पहले उसका बर्थ होता है और धीरे धीरे वो मेच्योरिटी की तरफ बढ़ता है, मेच्योर हो जाता है, उसको बिल्डिंग्सरोमा कहा जाता है. That's why Bildungsroman is also known as educational novel, developmental novel or coming of age novel. Bildungsroman, the term is from German. Bild means education in German, right? Bild means education in German. B-I-L-D-U-N. Bildungsroman. R-O-M-A-N. Bild means education and Roma means novel. A novel that deals with the education of the character is called the Bildungsroman. Right? That deals with the education of the character is called Bildungsroman. Right? It is also known as coming of age story. Coming of age story. It is also known as developmental novel. A novel that develops the character. Developmental novel. These are the Englishized names of the German terms Bildungsroman and Erziehungsroman. German terms signifying novels of formation or novels of education. Novels of formation or novels of education. And the subject, the content of these novels is to develop the character, the development of the protagonist's mind and character. Mind as well as character. You could say that Bildungsroman is also the psychological development of the protagonist from the innocence to the knowledge, from the innocence to experience. This is the journey of Bildungsroman, right? In the passage from childhood through varied experiences and often through a spiritual crisis into maturity, which usually involves recognition of one's identity and role in the world. Identity and role in the world are also identified by the protagonist, right? Identity, what should be our identity, what is your identity, and what should be your role in future. These all the topics are discussed in the novel called Bildungsroman. And it is said that Homer's Iliad was the first Bildungsroman because it deals with the development of its protagonist Achilles. Achilles, in the beginning, he was very ruthless, very reckless character, and when he gives the body of Hector to King Priam, that was his maturity. So the novel travels from childhood to maturity, and such traveling experience in the form of novel is called Bildungsroman, is called formation novel, is called educational novel, is called coming of the age story, is called Erziehungsroman. Both are German terms. Alright. The form usually charts a movement from innocence to knowledge. From innocence, it is a journey from innocence to knowledge. Take the examples from Homer's Iliad, and then I come to Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. Henry Fielding's Tom Jones, in the beginning of the novel, he was a foundling. Mr. Squire Allworthy found him and he was brought up and nourished at the home of Mr. Allworthy, and he grows up and then he becomes a picaresque. The entire novel deals from his birth to his maturity to his marriage. Another novel, Charles Dickens's David Copperfield. Charles Dickens's The Great Expectations. The protagonist is born in the novel and then it develops, right? Life and opinions of Tristram Shandy. It's also type of Bildungsroman, where he was born and then he grows up, he becomes mature. These are the examples of Bildungsroman. Which one is the first example of Bildungsroman? What is the origin? Who coined the term Bildungsroman? Right? Who coined the term Erziehungsroman? So now let's see who coined the term. The term was coined by a professor, right? In his lecture, he coined the phrase. The term was coined in 1819, just after 100 years after the development of English novel. The first English novel was published in 1719, and that first English novel was Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. In 1819, another person who was a philologist, Jean Carl Simon, in his university lectures, and was later famously reprised by Wilhelm Dilthey, who legitimized it in 1870 and popularized it in 1905. The birth of Bildungsroman is generally dated to the publication of Wilhelm's Mistress Apprenticeship, and the novel was written by Goethe in 1795-96, and Goethe himself was a German novelist and German critic. And the first novel in this genre is said to be, किसको कहा जाता है? That is Goethe's novel, right? Wilhelm's Master's Apprenticeship. And from Germany, it was brought to England by Thomas Carlyle in the Victorian era. First, Thomas Carlyle translated the work of Goethe, and then he wrote his own novel, Sartor Resartus. Sartor Resartus means the tailor retailored, right? And the entire philosophy of class of Thomas Carlyle was based on Germanic philosophy. He was very much inspired from Germany, and Sartor Resartus is said to be the first Bildungsroman in English. Right? Thomas Carlyle's English translation of Goethe's novel and his own Sartor Resartus, the first English Bildungsroman, inspired many British novelists. But it doesn't mean that there was no Bildungsroman before Carlyle. There were many, right? Henry Fielding himself wrote the novel in the 18th century, and then he didn't know the term like Bildungsroman. Right? Another novel that was published in the Victorian age itself, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. That is the Bildungsroman. Jane was taken care of by her aunt, and then she was ousted from home. She was admitted to a school, and how she grows up, how she builds up her character, and how Mr. Rochester comes into her life. पूरी का पूरा जो development है Jane Eyre का, the name of the novel itself, Jane Eyre, and autobiography, she details the development of a character. That is the coming of age story. All right, let's see a few more examples from the literary area, from the literary world. K.P. Martin's Anton Rezo, Goethe Wilhelm's Mistress Apprentice, 1795-96, Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre, George Eliot, another Victorian novelist, The Mill on the Floss, Charles Dickens's David Copperfield, and The Great Expectations, then Somerset Maugham on Human Bondage, then Thomas Mann, The Magic Mountain, and then you have Gunter Grass, The Tin Drum. These are the important novels of Bildungsroman, important novels that deal with the coming of age story, that deals with the development of the character, development of the protagonist, right? Education of the protagonist from innocence to knowledge, from birth to maturity. Right, these are the prime examples of Bildungsroman or Erziehungsroman. All right, and the subgenre Bildungsroman is Künstlerroman. Künstlerroman is the subgenre of Bildungsroman, and Künstlerroman shows the development of the protagonist as an artist. The development of the protagonist as an artist, that's why Künstlerroman is called artist's novel. Right, what it is called? It is called artist's novel, Künstlerroman, which represents the growth of the novelist or the other artist from childhood into the stage of maturity that signalizes the recognition of the protagonist's artistic destiny and mastery of an artistic craft. When the novelist, when the narrator, or when the protagonist grows up and becomes an artist, his journey from his innocence to become an artist is the story of Künstlerroman, and the best example is James Joyce's novel, The Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. He goes through several phases of his life, and finally he finds solace in art. He finds solace in painting. Right, that is the builder, that is Künstlerroman. Development of the protagonist from an innocent man to an artist, that is an artist's novel, that is Künstlerroman. Instances of this type include some major 20th century novels: Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past, Remembrance of Things Past, James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Thomas Mann's Tonio Kroger, and not only Tonio Kroger, but another novel by Thomas Mann, that is Dr. Faustus. Dr. Faustus is a play by Christopher Marlowe, but Dr. Faustus is a novel by Thomas Mann and Henry Guide's The Counterfeits. One more example I want to mention here: Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, Mr. Ramsey's Family, right, Lily Briscoe, ये एग्जाम्पल है Künstlerroman का, आर्टिस्ट नॉवल का, where the artist develop, where a character, where a child develops into an artist. That is the story of Künstlerroman. All right, these are the two German terms, right, Bildungsroman and Künstlerroman. Now I come to the two French terms, novel with a key and then thesis novel. Novel with a key is known as roman à clef. These are the examples, right? Examples of the novels. Novel with the key. Roman à clef. Roman means novel. It is a now French term. Roman à clef, French for novel with a key. Novel with a key means Roman à clef is a work of prose fiction in which the author expects the knowing reader to identify, despite their altered names, actual people of the time. Roman à clef is the story of some real person, but the name of the real persons have been fictionalized. Names of the real persons have been fictionalized by the novelist, and the reader can identify that this character represents this real man. This character represents that real man. Right? That is the story of Roman à clef. Real characters are presented through fictional characters. Real characters are presented through fictional characters. That is Roman à clef. Clef means key. Actual, sometimes well-known people or institutions are presented with fictional names. Right? Fictional name से present कर दिए जाते हैं real story or characters. Often, Roman à clef is considered to be the part of satire. They are the satirical novelists, satirical novels Roma Clef is frequent feature of satirical novels such as Evelyn Waug's novel The Loved One and Mary McCarthy's novel Oasis. These are the two examples here of Roma Clef, where the protagonists are fictitious persons and they represent the real ones. One more example I want to mention here, George Orwell's Animal Farms. George Orwell's Animal Farm, right, there are several animals and animals represent the real characters, that is Roma Clef, right. The mode was begun in 17th century France with novels such as Madeleine de Scudder's Le Grand Cyrus, and then from there it came to England, and in England the examples are here. The most popular example is Thomas Love Peacock's novel The Nightmare Abbey. In The Nightmare Abbey, he presents a number of real romantic poets, real romantic novelists, essayists through fictitious names. The Thomas Love Peacock's Nightmare Abbey. Nightmare Abbey, published in 1818, whose characters are entertaining caricatures of such contemporary literary figures as Coleridge, Byron and Shelley. Coleridge, Byron and Shelley are presented through fictitious names, right? Names are fictitious but accents are same. They are known as Roma Clef. A later instance is Aldous Huxley's Point Counterpoint, published in the 20th century in 1928, in which we find under fictional names well-known English people of the 1920s such as the novelist D.H. Lawrence, the critic Middleton Murray and the right-wing political extremist Oswald Mosley. Right? These are the real characters, and real characters are presented in disguised form, presented in fictitious ones. This is the story of Roma Clef. Right? Roma Clef. Clef stands for key. Clef stands for key. Roma stands for novel. Novel with the key. And who are the keys? Keys are the real characters. Keys are the real characters, and real characters are presented in fictional way. Fictionalized characters represent the real ones. You could say that is Roma Clef. And now another French term, that is Roma thesis. Roma thesis. You would have heard the name thesis play. Thesis play is a problem play written by John Galsworthy, written by George Bernard Shaw, or there are a few problem plays, thesis plays written by William Shakespeare. Now you have Roma thesis. Roma thesis, it's once again a French term, and it means thesis novel. Thesis means issue. Thesis means problem. And Roma thesis is also called as protest novel. Protest novel. Roma thesis is called the protest novel. It is a didactic novel that puts forward an argument or proposes a solution to some problem of politics, morality or philosophy. Politics, morality or philosophy के problems it picks, and then it suggests solutions to those problems. That is Roma thesis. Right? A novel that advocates a specific position on a social or moral question. Social or moral questions are tackled in such novels, Roma thesis, and it is frequently interchangeably used, right, with the term protest novels. Right? Protest novels, they are not propaganda novels. They are protest novels where a social problem is picked by the novelist, and he details all the issues, and then he tries to suggest the resolution, the solution to the problem. That is Roma thesis. And now you would be thinking of the example, such novels were basically written in 20th century. And 19th century, the examples are, the most celebrated example is Harriet Beecher Stowe's novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin, published in 1822. Harriet Beecher Stowe, which powerfully urged the abolition of slavery. The abolition of slavery, and it is said that this novel played a very vital role in the Civil War of America. And the conclusion of that Civil War was assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. The novel discusses the problem of slaves and discusses the problems of slavery. Right? Uncle Tom's Cabin. Who was the novelist? Novelist was Harriet Beecher Stowe, and this is a very important question for your UGC NET exam. A more philosophical kind of thesis novel is Jean-Paul Sartre's La Nausée, French title, which embodies many of the principles of his existentialism. John Steinbeck's novel The Grapes of Wrath, published in 1939, an indictment of migrant laborers of the 1930s. 1930s के plight of indictment of laborers. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Russian novel One Day in the Life of Ivan Densikovich, 1962, and this novel was a protest against the concentration camps of Soviet Union of Russia. Right? Concentration camps जो लगाए गए थे, right, against the inhumanity of the Soviet concentration camp. Right? This is the protest novels. Right? Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. Right? Then Jean-Paul Sartre's novel La Nausée, and then John Steinbeck's novel The Grapes of Wrath, and then Alexander Solzhenitsyn's One Day in the Life of Ivan Densikovich, a protest against the Soviet Union's concentration camps. Right? So this is all for today's class. I hope you would have understood each and every point very beautifully, very well. Next class में मिलते हैं carrying a few more terms regarding novels. Right? You have a number of topics in novels like epistolary novel, picaresque novel, historical novel, right? Sentimental novel, anti-sentimental novel, right? And I will discuss all such novels in your class one by one. So today's class is over here. मिलते हैं in the next class with a few more terms. Thank you so much for watching the channel. Thank you so much for liking, sharing and subscribing. It's your favorite platform, the New Lyceum for English Literature. And if you are preparing for UGC NET examination or PhD entrance examination, or if you are preparing for CUET examination next year, PG entrance examination, then this channel is going to help you a lot. Please keep on sharing the channel with your friends. Right? Thank you so much. All the best. Good luck.